Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dean Whitaker. I'm a senior engineer with WSP Canada, working for Niagara region on a number of key projects. Very happy to be with you today to share my presentation with you. Intended to be interactive, so I hope everyone enjoys it. Just before we do, a few words. As we learn about the significance of water this week, let us also reflect on the land on which we gather. We understand that the history of the land on which we live, and that provides us with the precious resource of water. Niagara region is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattah-Wadarok, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the First Credit Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Niagara Children's Water Festival stands with all Indigenous peoples, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of lands on which we live and the water which sustains us. So now, thank you again for having me, and we are going to talk about lakes, drones, high-powered construction in your community. A little bit of an introduction on some topics for us is we're going to talk about where your water comes from. In your case, specifically in Niagara region, it likely either comes from Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, Niagara River, or maybe even indirectly the Welland Canal. So it's very important that we understand how to preserve and best utilize our water resources. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the natural environment. That's some of the stuff I just mentioned about the Indigenous and the stewardship, and then how we've transformed that into the built environment for our enjoyment and our lifestyles. We're then going to talk about something a little bit more fun, which I hope you all find interesting, is drones, and how we use drones on construction sites to ensure quality. We're then going to have a bit of a Q&A period. We're going to take a flight up in one of our drones above one of our construction sites to conclude, and afterwards a Q&A session followed by a water activity. So I hope you all enjoy. So this is a simple schematic here about where your water comes from. And again, if you're in the Niagara region, again, it's probably Lake Ontario, Erie, the Niagara River. Niagara is blessed with a lot of natural resources, which is fantastic. In our specific case, we're talking about Lake Ontario. So we get it from the source. What do we do next? Well, we have to treat it. We have to make sure it's what's called potable water, so it's safe for us to ingest into our bodies, swim in it, bathe in it, all that super good stuff. So after we treat it, we then need to store it. You'll probably notice in the mornings, in the evenings, and at lunchtime, you typically use a lot of water. And so we have to bring the water in, we have to treat it, and then we have to store it so it's ready to ultimately be distributed into your home. So what we're going to talk about, a little bit of a theme here. So the storage, just imagine that as a lake. And essentially what we're building on our site is a giant enclosed lake which has safe, clean water. We then talk about some of the rivers. What we mean by that is the subgrade pipe networks and how water enters into your home. That's a bit of a theme here about this. So, and finally, after all that, source water, withdrawal from the water source, treatment, storage, distribution through those as-built, as-constructed lakes and rivers goes straight to your home.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to get into some of the specifics here. So this specific project is specifically for Grimsby as well as Smithville, both within Lake Ontario. So I hope some of you are from those communities and are excited about this. So we have our water source here, which is Lake Ontario. And what we're doing at our treatment plant is the Grimsby Water Treatment Plant, which is right by the QEW. It's that nice architectural brick building. So hopefully some of you have seen it when you drive by. One of the rivers, or man-made rivers, out of the plant is shown in the blue there, and that's a transmission main. So that's an underground pipeline which takes water from the treatment plant all the way up to what will be soon our project site. At our project site, we convey water following storage all the way up to Smithville. So this starts in Grimsby, finishes in Smithville, and our project site is about halfway through. And what it is we're enhancing water supply and distribution throughout these communities. That's the crux of this project. Here, and if you're familiar with Grimsby, we're at the top of the Niagara Escarpment, right on some past agricultural land. So this is the vacant site, and this site was like this about 3 to 4 years ago before construction has started. And we'll be taking you around the various stages of construction. So we have a vacant site right here. And here's our goal. Here is what we're building on this. We're building a valve house. And think of the valve house, that's the pipe system. That's what connects the treatment to the storage and ultimately onto your home. And then we're building this nice big reservoir. The reservoir is about 15 million liters, so about 15 million milk bags. Very large capacity. Think of that underground structure, that's an as-constructed lake. So we have our rivers and we're lakes. So we're taking them from the natural to our as-constructed, straight to your home. So what we're gonna do now is talk a little bit about construction safety. We're gonna take a virtual tour of our job site. But before we do that, I just want you to think about a few things here. On construction sites, there are a lot of hazards. Those hazards aren't a whole lot different from some of the hazards in and around your home. You know, you've probably heard your parents saying, you know, make sure you have your bike helmet, make sure you open your eyes, make sure you look both ways before crossing the street. All that's very important, and all that is highly important when we go to our job site. So I'm just going to flash a few things up, but if you want to take some time and maybe think about it, we'll just go through it slowly. But one of the first things we do is we make sure we're appropriately dressed. So one of the things that we'll see when we go on our job site is all the safety equipment I have on. It starts from your head. It's the most important thing to protect your head. So we have hard hats. We have bright colored clothing to identify us. We have safety boots because we don't want to step on any nails or any sharp pieces. So that's the first thing. We definitely want to remain safe. Some of the other things that we're doing is there's a lot of big, heavy machinery on site, especially this job site, and you'll see that on our tour here. So one of the things is we always want to keep our eyes open. We always want to identify with those operators what we're doing on site, what the purpose is on site, and so that they're aware of us. Same thing when you're crossing the street. Your parents have always said, keep your eyes open, make contact with the drivers. Similar thing here. Safety first, and then again, if anything ever does happen, we want to make sure there's always someone on site who knows first aid and could call an ambulance if needed. But we're going to be safe, so that's not needed. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a little bit of a tour on site. You'll see me on the job site, and then we'll come back and we'll sort of bring it all home. So we're going to pan out to the video, and we're going to take a site visit right now. Morning, everyone. My name is Dean Whitaker, a project manager and design engineer of the Grimsby Water Storage System. I'm here right now on the Grimsby Water Storage System site. You'll notice the first thing we do whenever we're on site is we're ensure we're safe. First thing I've done is you notice the hard hat, the safety vest, and down beneath I have my safety boots on as well. That's to make sure we're safe on site. The other thing that we do is check in with the site supervisor, which I've done to make sure he knows I'm present on site and knows to keep a lookout for me. What we're going to do now is just do a brief survey of the site, and I'll introduce you to some of the key aspects. So again, I'm standing right on the northern section of the site. First thing to notice, this is Park Road. We're doing water main construction on the road, and they have what's called traffic barrels up, and that's to help with traffic control.
so that the water main could be installed safely. What we have, and I'll just go around and start to survey the site a little bit here. We've got our site trailer back there in the distance. We have a storage area or a laydown area. That's for pipe and concrete, shoring and reinforced bar to strengthen the concrete. As you can see, there's a couple excavators on site which are grading. That flat area right there, that is all granular material. That forms the base of the reservoir itself, and that's it's structurally compacted, and that will be where the cast in place concrete for the reservoir cells are located. If we go further along the site, that's a very large crane. That crane is used to put in formwork and false work and help with the construction of the reservoir. And over there, that is where our valve house is going to go. And we're going to walk a little bit closer to there. We're going to introduce you to our drone survey crew, and we'll show you some other aspects of construction of this reservoir.
All right, awesome. Hope you enjoyed a little bit of a site tour there. We're actually going to go back to this job site. We're going to fast forward a little bit in a bit and give you a drone's eye view. So this is the sort of fun part. I hope some of you are interested in drones, and maybe you even have some drones at home. So we'll talk about that. We'll do a bit of a QAQ session. But what do drones do for us on site? Well, they can provide us with a bird's eye view of what's going on, things we now can see in the air that we couldn't, help us for quality. But we also have specialized cameras on this drone that we're going to go on. And we'll get into that in a sec, but it can be used on topographic information for us to measure elevations, which is really cool, but also spatially too, to make sure our job site is laid out. And so we could use these to ensure quality on our job site. This exact drone that we have right now, there's some specifications on it right there, but it's got a flight speed of about 16 meters a second, or about 36 miles an hour. It's about how fast a car should be going on your local residential street. Flight time is about an hour long, so it's battery powered. It's got the ability to fly for about an hour. The maximum altitude on this is about 400 feet, or about 120 meters, which corresponds to approximately the distance of that large high crane you saw on site. So when we do take our flight, that's how high we'll be flying at. And the maximum distance is about 10 kilometers. So that's why we launched this drone on our job site. We usually want to maintain visual contact with your drone always. Same thing with the one you have at home. So before we do our tour here, this is actually an image that our drone has captured. That's an actual image. So you see those two large concrete faces. Those are basically as constructed lakes. Think of them like that. They're about 120 meters by about 150 meters. That small little square at the bottom, that's our valve house. So we talked about the rivers, we talked about the lakes. You see here some of the circular stuff, that records each of the drone's flight path. So we're taking the aerial image and we're tracking how we fly, how high we fly, what times of day to monitor construction progress. So one of the things we talked about is spatial location. So we want to ensure quality in our job site. How do we make sure that those reservoir cells, those as-built lakes are exactly where we want them to be? Well, here's what we do. We take that drone footage and we overlay our images, our design on top of that. And as you can see right now, the dual-celled reservoirs, those as-built lakes, as well as the valve house, that is in the exact right location that it needs to be. So we know that that's really good. So one, it's in the right location. So that's awesome. These are just some construction images. So these are the bird's eye view. This is how we monitor construction progress. So one of them is right when we're getting started, pre-grading and excavation. The next one here you see is only about a month after the first one. So we're starting to pour the finished floor of the reservoir. We're starting to get the valve house set. You can see there, that's Lake Ontario in the distance there. So here's another one. This is probably about 18 months ago. So you could start to see the walls of the reservoir going up and the columns in the reservoir. The columns are the things that support the roof. So we're not that advanced in construction yet that we've got the roof on, but you know what? We are there now. This is one that was just taken a few months ago. I believe this was either in December or January. You could see on this one, we actually have the full roof encased in, just about. We've got the valve house there. That's nice and constructed, and we're starting to grade everything up. So when we talk about grading, we talk about elevations. And those elevations are all relative to sea level. So we already went through that it's built in the right location. We want to make sure our drones capture the right elevation. So we know for sure it's being built according to our specification. So again, here's what we do. Here is an imagery of our as-built lake. And you can see here, this is a little bit more advanced. We've got some of the top ceiling heights. So the finished floor of the reservoir and the ceiling height is critical so that we know it's being built to the right depth. So how do we use drones to do that? Well, here's what we do. So the drones just don't give they just don't give a visual image. They'll give something that's called an orthographic image. And you can see here those different colors of greens and yellows and brown. That's an indication of how high of the as-built elevations of our reservoir. So you can see here, what I've done is I've actually clicked on the ceiling height, and you can see the ceiling height there. I think it's about 202 meters in elevation. So what I've then got now is we've got our as-built drawing. And I'm looking at the as-built drawing, and I'm seeing about 202 meters in elevation. So that's how we use drones. So I know the as-built construction is exactly the same as our detailed design. So that's highly valuable. So the contractor in this case has done a very good job, located the reservoir exactly where we wanted to, built it to the exact elevation. So we've got a high degree of confidence that this has been built exactly right. So again, here is our reservoir, and here is when we'll be doing a little bit of fun stuff. We're actually going to be taking a flight up top of our reservoir. We'll start that video in just a second, and then we'll conclude with some questions, followed up by a little bit of a take-home activity for your work. So if you just see those red dotted arrows around the reservoir, that's going to be our tour. So we're going to go to that now, and I'm going to talk you through it here. So we'll start to show the video in just a second. All right, here we go. That's awesome. So we are up now almost about 100 meters, and we're flying at the south end of our site. Those blue pipes, those long things, those are the rivers that we're putting in subgrade. As we go up, we see some of the excavators, and there we see, this is about halfway finished, our as-built lake, our as-built reservoir. So the walls are fully erected, the support columns for the roof are almost all up, and you can see here we're starting to really enclose the reservoir. You also see on the north end, that's the large crane. So that crane has a capacity of about 100 meters. So we're flying right now about 100 meters on top of our reservoir. And we'll just continue to rotate in. Again, you see all the columns, lots of concrete, lots of steel and rebar, lots of steel and rebar in this construction. Again, we're going just past our crane. That's a big, huge crane. We're just doing a 360 view. You could see there on the right-hand side all the concrete circles. Those are actually maintenance holes. They aren't placed yet, but they will be. And that's to take the groundwater away from our reservoir, because we want to keep what's inside very neat and clean. Again, you can see on the right-hand side, those are all our pipes. They're to be installed, connecting that reservoir to our distribution system, to some of the existing lakes, as-built rivers that we have in the area. Lots of activity on site. So at any one time, we may have 50 different specialized contractors on site to help get this built. Yeah, so that's a great aerial view. That's a great aerial view here. And that's where I want to conclude with our presentation right now. So Very, very happy to take questions. I know we've got some time for questions, so before we talk about our take-home water activity, very happy to take any questions that you have.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dean. That was amazing. And those videos are awesome. So we do have a couple questions. So from Mrs. Smith's grade 3 class, they're wondering, do you deploy drones remotely from your office to complete the survey work? And if so, what is the range?
That is a good question. So the range on them is about 10 kilometers, but because these are very expensive drones with highly expensive equipment on them, we like to maintain a visual at all the times. So whenever we do this, we take them to the job site, we set up within about 500 meters at least of where we want to be, then we deploy the drones to always maintain visual contact.
Awesome. And Mr. Courteau's grade 4-5 class in Beamsville is curious to know, how many drones does your company have for work like this?
That's another great question. We're constantly upgrading our drones. We usually get 1 or 2 new ones every year. At any one time, we may have 24 drones where we could deploy across Canada for any one of our projects. In Ontario, we probably have about 3 or 4 that we actively use on our job sites.
Amazing. I can't believe you do all that work with just 3 or 4. Mrs. Brunet's grade 2-3 class asks, can I use my drone at home for work like the project you've described?
Yeah, it's a good question. You probably could, but you need to supply a highly specialized camera. Can be very expensive, but also the software to utilize it. So you could use your own drone. You probably got a little bit of limitations on it, and to upgrade it might be a little bit above your parents' budget, but I encourage you to check the websites, Best Buy. This is all available, and hopefully your parents don't get too upset at me for recommending that.
Hey, you're just starting people on the path to becoming engineers. All right, and we have a question from Mr. Gable's grade 4-5 class, and they're interested to know how many engineers worked on the Grimsby Reservoir project, and how many people helped with the construction?
Yeah, that's another great question. So when we're designing this, we have the site plan to work out. We have the process mechanical stuff. That's the pipes and pumps and things like that. We have the structural engineers to do the concrete and rebar. We have electrical engineers to do the power, building mechanical engineers to do all the internal plumbing and the ventilation and heating. We have the instrumentation and control engineers for how the system works. So those are the main ones, but at any one time, we probably no less than 10 engineers touched this project and helped to design it. And like I was saying before, the number of contractors to build this is at least 50. So a very large presence, both in the design and construction.
Wow, so many people were working on that project. And we have one final question, and it's from Miss Nicole's class, and they're wondering, how big is that water reservoir? Is it the size of a football field? Is it a hockey stadium? Just how big is it?
So that one, each cell is about the size of a small soccer field. So we've essentially got 2 soccer fields. It's about 6 meters tall, about 24 feet tall, so about 3 of me high, which is about what that is. So again, it's about 15 million liters. So you think of a liter as about a milk bag. We'll take 15 million of them, fill up your reservoir, and that's essentially about how large it is.
Wow, so big. So Dean, we're getting tons and tons of questions in here, so I don't think we're going to have time to answer them all. But if you guys do have questions, please put them in the YouTube chat or give us an email at waterfestival@niagararegion.ca. But I'm going to quickly throw it back to Dean because I know he has a great work activity that he wants to share with you guys. So Dean, if you want to explain it for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. This is voluntary, hopefully you'll do it, but there's certainly no pressure here. And if you do choose to do it, please submit your answers to your teacher, and your teacher will be in contact with Niagara Region, and we'll assign a voluntary grade or a voluntary certificate. So just a few things to talk about how much water we actually use a day in our house. So one of the things is when you go home, just walk around and count how many fixtures you have. And what I mean by that is how many water taps. So how many sinks you have, how many showers you have, if you've got other hose bibs outside, just count how many. And then with each individual one, grab a measuring device, could be a measuring cup or a bucket. You'll also need a stopwatch. Lots of you, like my kids, have iPhones. Put the faucet on, full, measure the volume over the time, and then you'll get a flow rate, the maximum flow rate or the maximum water demand in your house. And that's what I would like each of you to do, to give you an order of magnitude about how much water your family uses every day. So again, voluntary, would love it if you do it. If you do take the time to do it, please submit it through your teacher, and your teacher will get it to us via Niagara Region. So thank you very much.
Amazing. I can't wait to go home and test that out. Well, thank you so much, Steen. This was so informational, and I love the content and the videos from your presentation. So thank you for joining us, and thank you guys for all of your questions. And thank you again for joining us for the 2022 Niagara Children's Water Festival.